and welcome to our exciting webinar on the new analytics widget. My name is Riina and I'll be your host today. With me, I have Tiffany and Yvonne. Tiffany will go through most of today's content and she does the Birst side of things. Yvonne will walk you through the EPM part. Before we get started with the actual topic, a few quick tips on the platform we're using for the webinar. You have several screens or windows in your screen, and you can resize them, move them around. And if you want to go to full screen, there should be arrows on the top hand right corner to do that. There might be some issues with your network or other minor glitches. Pressing F5 or refreshing the screen, the browser, will usually help with that. If it doesn't, there's a Q&A chat that you can use to post about your problems, and we'll get back to you with potential fixes to the issues. We have a couple of webinars coming up. First, we have the GRC webinar on streamlining user attestations on 25th of September. And in October, we have our very popular What's New in the October release for Infor OS. The date will be confirmed a little later, and we will post announcements about the webinars about 2 weeks before the actual session. Quick shout out to the developer portal that now operates on a new platform. Lots of good content there, tutorials, best practices, and of course, our community. If you haven't visited yet, now's the time to do that. You can access community content even without an account. But if you want to interact, get into maybe private groups or ask questions yourself, you need an account. It's free, easy to create, so a warm recommendation for that one. A couple of housekeeping items. The session will be recorded. It will be available through the registration link and on YouTube in maybe a week or so. You can ask questions in the Q&A chat during the session. We'll try to answer a few of them live. It's a fairly packed session today, so we'll see if there is a real Q&A at the end. If not, we're trying something new, and we will be posting the Q&A into the Birst and EPM communities early next week, I think, maybe Monday or Tuesday. So all your questions and answers, no email addresses or names will be there, but they will be posted in the community. So another good reason to join that one. And with that, I'm gonna give it over to Tiffany. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Riina. Hi, everyone. I'm Tiffany Canada. I'm the Director of Product Management for Data and Analytics here at Infor. And today what we want to really talk about and focus on is everything to do with the Visual Analytics widget. You may have already seen the widget in your widget catalog, but today we're going to be talking about all of the cool new functionality that we have that will be part of the October release. And some of this may already actually be in your production tenant today. So let's just talk through our agenda here. But first, before we get to that, of course, just our normal disclaimer here. So just to, kind of our safe harbor response around our release training. But in terms of our agenda, we're going to be going over how the new Visual Analytics works with Birst and, excitingly, EPM as well. So we're having a single widget that will be able to utilize both applications. We're going to go through the overall capabilities, and then we're also going to highlight the in-context capabilities of that as well. And then we will end with just a summary of everything that we covered. Again, like Riina said, if you have any questions as we're going through this, please post those in chat. We'll try to answer those either throughout the presentation, and if we have time for Q&A at the end, we'll certainly get to those. But first, let's talk about the widget. You've probably seen us talk about this ever since the April release, but it's just becoming more and more critical now as we're continuing to build the new workspaces that are persona-based and persona-driven. You're going to continue to see more and more of these analytics widgets popping into your workspaces. And why is that so important? Oftentimes we hear customers don't want to travel across all of these different screens to find information that they need, right? Today, if you want to know a specific KPI, you might have to travel through a Birst dashboard. You might have to add a bunch of filters. You might have to go through several different pages to try to get that information. And maybe that's just a high level KPI or trend that you're actually wanting to see every single day. And that's really what this widget is meant to use to be solved for, so that you're able to make more data-driven decisions in your process without having to continue to navigate through the screens. And we're going to talk a lot about how we plan to do that, again, with those persona-based workspaces, but then also some of the in-context capabilities that we can do directly with your ERP screens. So in terms of the widget itself, everything is actually part of the actual workspace. It's no longer utilizing the Birst iframe that you may already be familiar with. We unfortunately had a lot of inconsistent performance with that widget because it was creating all of these new sessions each time that you were trying to log into a workspace. And so to solve for that, we made something that was actually native to the workspace. And so we basically took out our charting capability and made it its own product, if you will, so that we can utilize that here. And all we're doing is passing queries, and you're able to then fully change the chart to your desires without having to navigate to Birst to make those changes there. We have over 30 different charting options and configurations for you to choose from. And we're going to be highlighting quite a few of those today. So let's talk about some of the functional overview. So the first thing is going to be setting up the widget. So this is where you actually add the widget to the workspace. So we'll walk through how to create a new workspace and then how to add a widget to that. Of course, you can also add widgets to a workspace that's already been created. So we'll follow a couple of different options that you have there. And then after you have it, we're going to also talk about how do you utilize it? How do you put in your queries from either EPM or Birst? So I'll be highlighting kind of the Birst capabilities initially, and then Yvonne will be joining us to showcase how this works for the EPM side. We'll talk about things like combo charts, some of the configurations, KPIs, and of course, the thing that I'm most passionate about is that context messaging and being able to have these widgets be a lot more dynamic than they used to be. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the demo. So the first thing that I'm going to show is just a workspace, right? Let's just start from a general persona-based workspace that you may already actually have in your organization. So these workspaces are meant to be specifically to a person in the organization. In this particular circumstance, we're looking at the buyer within an organization. This is CSI. If anyone's curious, this is CSI, but the concepts are the exact same, whether you have CSI, M3, LN, all of our different ERP applications have these same concepts where they're generating these different persona-based workspaces. And in this scenario, I've got two widgets that are full of KPIs. You can see the different trends here. You can see how if there's any type of alert that's going on for those. And then you can also see the actual chart here with the data. So this is just a great example of a combo chart that we have. And if I scroll down here, you'll also start to notice that there's more than just these Birst data here on this workspace. You're actually able to see things like planned purchases. So this is kind of culminating capabilities from a bunch of different applications into a single location, so that you can do your job in one place, hopefully, right? And not having to navigate all across all of your different ERP screens or the Birst dashboards, or maybe you're also looking at EPM data. You can see that in a single view without having to navigate in between. So let's just take a look at some of the configuration options that we have available. So in this specific example, we're looking at purchase spend by month, and you'll notice here I have a ton of different chart types that I can look at. So right now I have a combo chart where I have a line option, and then I also have the column option. I can also change this to view different options. So I could go to area or a spline, maybe just an area spline, right? So you have all of these different capabilities. I'm just going to switch back over here to combo chart. You'll notice when I scroll down, there's also this incompatible chart types. So we really wanted to make this widget smart. So when you indicate the query that you're wanting to utilize to actually generate this data, we're going to give you chart suggestions based off of the data that you're giving us. So in this example, because I have two measures, donut charts aren't going to make sense, because in a donut chart, you have a single measure that you're actually looking at the distribution across a single attribute. And so we're not even going to give that as an option. So we're going to make sure that based off of the data that we're receiving, that we're providing compatible charts to you. In addition to that, we also added some additional capabilities if you want to add things like trellises, or maybe you want to add something to the color bucket. You can do that here by just switching these arrows to add to color or to convert to that attribute. This is also where you can determine which one is a line and which one is the column. So you have different options here. So maybe one is a spline and one is a line. So we have all of the different types that you might have been familiar with in the Birst side. We're bringing that directly into the widget. And what's great about this is the changes that you make on the individual widget here are not going to affect anything on the Birst side. So if you remember in our previous widget, you would have to go to the actual widget, or to the actual visualizer report, make your changes, and then those would inherit into the workspace themselves. So we're basically just trying to cut some of the necessary steps and make it a lot easier for an end user to utilize. You can also access the query. You can see that we have different chart modes. So again, if you're familiar with the chart modes in the Birst dashboards, these are the exact same. So as I click down through here, you can see how those visualizations change, and we'll be implementing some additional capabilities here in the future. Same with the chart options. Right now, you can remove an axis. Maybe you don't want those options over here, so you have a little bit of flexibility. You can also add things like display values. So have a lot of options here. Again, we're going to continue to grow these chart options. And if you ever have any requests, definitely feel free to put those in that enhancement request portal for us to view. We have things like conditional formatting. We'll talk a lot more about the context messaging and how that works in the future. And we'll also talk about some of our drilling options. And then we can do things like adding the currency. So if I want to come in here and add currency to these items, I can, so that now when I hover over here, it's going to show that currency sign. And it will also show, for any of the trends as well. So before I start to the next stop or part, I was just going to ask Rena, are there any questions in the chat that we could go ahead and answer?
So thank you, Tiffany, so far. I think the question everybody has in their minds is, can we use widgets from or reports from different spaces in one workspace?
Absolutely. So that is one of the other reasons that we designed this widget. So if you have multiple spaces, I think one of the best examples is if you have maybe an HRT Birst dashboards, and you have workforce management dashboards, and you actually want to culminate that information into a single workspace. In the past, you would kind of get errors between those Birst widgets. And so with the analytics widget, that was the one thing that we definitely wanted to solve for, was being able to have multiple spaces from Birst present on a single workspace. So yes, that will be available with this new widget.
That is awesome. I have another quick question.
Sure.
Can you modify the query directly in the KPI homepage?
Yes, so this is what the query looks like, and we'll talk about how you access or can get this query directly from Birst. We will have some things like some Gen AI capabilities here where you can actually build the query as well without having to navigate to Birst and get it or type it manually. But if you want to make a change to the query, you can access that here and come in and make that change, and then just validate it and then render chart. So once you've made a change, you'll want to make sure it's validated. And all the validation is doing is just making sure that the syntax is correct. And then once you render the chart with any change that you've made, then that it will automatically add it. And you mentioned KPI, so I'll just jump into a KPI really quickly here. And this is a little bit different functionality. And if I come in here, you'll notice I don't have very many options available when I have the 4 KPIs. So in the KPIs, you can choose from 1 all the way up to 4 widgets, or sorry, 4 KPIs in a single widget. And in each of those, you can have a query for the KPI itself and a trend query. And in this example, it is a little bit of fake data just because we wanted to make sure it looked good. But you can actually do your queries here, and Yvonne will show some examples of that directly with EPM. You can also automatically do things like show percentage change, so you don't have to build that into the query. And we have some additional ones that we'll be adding to this in the future as well. Any other questions, Rena, so far?
There's a lot. So
fantastic. I love a lot of questions.
yeah, so let's push them a little bit to the end, and we'll see
Okay.
if we have time to go through them. And if not, I want to remind that we'll do a Q&A post in the communities afterwards, so you get all your questions answered. But yeah, there's plenty at the moment.
Absolutely. Okay, love that. So let's jump into how do I add a workspace, and then how do I add this widget? Where do I find it? So in this scenario, I'm just going to add a new workspace from scratch. So if you're not familiar with workspaces, I just want to quickly highlight, we do have a lot of workspaces in the catalog. Depending on your application would determine what catalog workspaces you may see. Again, these are typically more persona driven, or maybe your organization has even created some. And we kind of build these as like a template, right? These are for you to utilize, but you might want to make some changes, and you can certainly do that. So just wanted to highlight that you might already have some workspaces out there. But in this scenario, we're going to add a new workspace from scratch. And I'm just going to call this my demo workspace. And you have 2 options. You can do it from the application, or you can do it from the widget list of widgets. So in this scenario, we want to make sure it's done through the widgets, and we'll use an icon here. And now I have the ability to create a bunch of different widget options. So we will be doing some deep dives. I know Rena talked about TechX happening in October. We're actually going to do a hands-on session. Paul Horn and myself will be doing a full 90-minute hands-on with everything to do with workspaces, including this widget and others. So just keep in mind some really great courses that will be happening during that event. But for this analytics widget, you're looking for visual analytics, and you can find it typically under business intelligence. We just did an update, so that's why you're going to see it on new and updated. But we're going to scroll down here. Some of these are just published widgets. So these may be the same analytics widget, but they've already been configured and can be published. So if you're an admin, or you're kind of a really like power user on some of these things, and you have a coworker who's like, I have no idea how to do this, you can create it, you can publish it, and then anyone can access that to then add to their own workspace. So you don't have to create the same widget over and over again. If you have the same information that needs to be on multiple workspaces, you can reutilize those. So I'll go ahead and add in this visual analytics widget. I'm just going to go ahead and add one for now. And if I increase this, what's really great when you start doing the configuration, it's going to inherit whatever size of that widget you've created, so that you can view exactly what's going to be on the workspace itself. So now that I've added that, I'm going to save and pop into the configure widget. So here we're going to have 2 options. We've got Birst and EPM. So of course, I'm going to focus on the Birst side. And again, Yvonne will be focusing more on the EPM side here in just a few moments. So when I select Birst, the first thing you got to select then is what is the application content. So I'll pause here and kind of give some more context. So each of your Birst spaces that you get as your delivered content is going to be associated to an application in the portal sense. And so in this case, we're utilizing CSI. So I would select the CSI content. If you have custom spaces, or maybe if you have partners who have created content for you that did not come as part of this application or part of the content delivered with your ERP, then there is some extra steps. We don't have time to go through those extra steps, but there is documentation on how you would create the application for that consumer space so that it would be visible here. So just keep in mind that if you're trying to create this and you don't see your space that you're actually trying to navigate that query to, it's just because an admin needs to go there and create the application. It's a really simple, quick process, but just want to note that if you do have any of that custom spaces, you'll need to take those steps. And again, that is all in our documentation. And so the next thing is I need to get the query. So I really need to go into Birst to get that query. That's going to be the easiest way. And so if I go into our Birst application here, I'm just going to navigate to Visualizer. Hopefully you're familiar with how to build a visualizer report. So I'm not going to necessarily go through all of those details, but I'm just going to pull up this gross margin report here. And so all I'm doing is I'm building a report. So if I pull in different measures and attributes, it's automatically going to be generating a query behind the scenes. And that's exactly what we're looking for. So in advanced tools, when you select queries, it's going to then give you that query of that report. So if you already have a report that you use every day, you could actually go just grab that query and bring that over. Or if you want to build a report from scratch, you can do that here as well. So once I've copied that query, I'm going to go back to my demo space and configure the widget, select CSI, and then I'm going to copy that query in here. So one thing that I do just want to note is you want to make sure that you're changing this. Part of what we're doing in the Birst side and when we're building these queries is it's not looking at your subject areas to know what should these column names be called. So in this scenario, we're actually looking at the margin, and then this is going to be your quarter. It's always looking at whatever is before your before that call 0, call 1, call 2. It's always whatever the attribute is or the measure is right before that. So that's kind of how you'll know what to put here. Then I'll validate. And once I've validated that this is good syntax, I'll hit next. And now I have the ability to go directly into that configuration to make all of the changes that I want to make. So the first thing that I might want to do is change this widget name. So this is going to be looking at margin, and I think it was gross margin. So I'll add that in there. You could add a subtitle if you wanted to. So maybe this is in USD, and you can also add descriptions here. So there's all kinds of things. I'll just show here is my widget. We'll show how that appears here in just a moment. So that's where you can edit this. This is going to be really important, especially if you're publishing these widgets, to make sure you give it a good name. And then again, the same capabilities here on the different chart types. So since this is by time, a line might make sense, or let's just do a spline here. I can also see tables, and Yvonne's going to have some good examples on how tables work. So all the same really cool functionality that you had that you have in tables and Birst, you have here as well. So really rich capabilities there on how you can utilize tables. Typically in a workspace, you might not want to have a ton of detail on that. So you might want to save more of those tables, but we also want to make that available for accessibility purposes. So you have that kind of option. And then again, you have the same options here. I can even change my chart type directly from this screen as well. And I have the same query. So let me stop there for just a moment. Rena, any good questions that we could answer here?
Yeah, so first of all, people are, of course, trying this as you're showing them what to do. And there are a few questions about getting unable to load product list.
Okay.
So,
yep. So the first thing is, do you have Birst, right? As long as you have Birst, that should work. I have seen a recent issue recently where the first time I went to open the configuration, it gave me that error, and then I logged out and logged back in, and then suddenly it worked. If you're still getting that error and you for sure already have Birst in your application, then definitely get a support ticket out, and we'll get that fixed as soon as possible. I haven't seen it too often, but I have seen it pop up every now and then. It actually even happened to me on this demo the very first time. And then again, I logged out, logged back in, and then suddenly it was working. So we are looking at that to see what might be causing it, but try that. And if that doesn't work, then definitely get a support ticket out to us and we'll make sure we get that fixed.
Do we need any specific security role to be able to use this widget?
It is possible. If it really depends on if you have the workspace roles. So as long as you're able to create and add a workspace, then you should have access to this widget. The only thing that I would note is you would want to have visualizer access to be able to access the query. So if you don't have visualizer access in Birst, then you would want to make sure that you get that or have an admin assist you with generating the query that you would need to copy over. Also, I should note that the security is inherited from the application of Birst, so it is using your user when you're submitting that query. So as long as you have security as long as you have your security applied at Birst, you should also see the same security applied here as well.
Okay, yeah, and that was one of the questions. If security within a space would create an issue, obviously not. You would see only the data you're allowed to see. There's also questions around the same product thingy without or with EPM, but I guess we'll talk about that with Yvonne. Let me see if there was anything quick that we could.
Yeah, again, close and reopen. If you have EPM, it should be visible. But yeah, when we get to Yvonne's part, then she can speak to that if there's any additional steps that they need to take.
Yeah, one quick question. Once you have published your widget, can you change it afterwards?
Yes. So there's this edit publishing configuration option here. So yes, you can. There are some additional steps that you might need to take that we are working on changing for the October release. So if I go back into, let's just use this one as an example. This is a published workspace. And so when I go into this published workspace, I don't see that configuration option. So this basically allows, if you're an admin creating these, an end user isn't, accidentally making changes that affect everybody else. And so in order to access that configuration, you would need to go into the configuration editor for the workspace. And that's when you should be able to see that configuration option. So we've put in some security measures around that as well.
All right. One more quick question at this point.
Sure.
What about filters? Are they available for these?
Yeah, so the way that we apply filters is that we're able to listen to context. Let me see if there's a filter on this workspace or this workspace. I don't have an example of it, but if I go back into my edit mode here, with our published workspaces that we're creating, there will be an option up here that will have filtering. And basically, we listen to the context of the filtering that is available. So that's one way that we are doing that in our published workspaces that we're sharing. The other way that we can do that, if I jump back over to the buyer, and I'm going to say yes, that I don't need to save that. You can also listen to context in here. So let's say I had set up the context messaging so that as I select these planned purchases, then these could automatically listen to the context from this widget and automatically apply. And I will show an example of this and how it works with the ERP, but it's the exact same capabilities that you would also be able to do on the workspace. So it's not inherently built into the widget itself. We wanted it to be a little bit more global so that you're not having to change the filtering options on each widget individually. We want it to be able to work completely, as a whole.
Great. Thank you. I'll shut up now.
Awesome. Thank you. Great questions. So let me jump back into the controller. One thing I just wanted to quickly demonstrate is you can also create URLs to then bounce to in this case, we're going to go into the balance sheet directly into the Cloud Suite Analytics content. And so you do have the ability to also have a lot of options in terms of that flexibility. So you might want to have some really high level things on the workspace, but if you want to get even more detailed, then maybe it makes sense to go into a dashboard. And so we wanted to make it really easy so that you don't have to go find the application, open it, navigate to the correct dashboard. You can actually create those directly from here. And if I come back into, let's just go into this demo tenant, into configuration, that is set up here in this link. We do have documentation on the syntax with this URL. And then we also have something that'll be coming by the end of the year that will actually help create this URL for you. So it's just going to ask you some basic information like what's the collection name, what's the dashboard name, and what's the space. And it's going to then create that URL so you don't have to know how to do the URL encoding or anything like that. So making that a lot easier to curate, but you can already do it. It just takes a little bit more creativity to know how to create that URL. And again, we do have that syntax documented. All right, so let's jump into the actual Sightline demo, and then I'm going to pass over to Yvonne. So this is going back to that filtering piece. So I'm in a CSI screen here. I'm looking at my items. And then over here, I have my insights panel. So if you haven't used this, this is this little widgets guy here, if you highlight over here. And you can have multiple different options. You can have different quick links. You can have all kinds of cool, like they're almost like miniature workspaces, if you will. So in this example, I have a gross margin and I have net sales. And this gross margin and net sales is listening to context from the application. So right now, this is actually filtering based off of this product code. And then if I go to FA 30,000, it's going to then change so that it's actually now looking at this particular product. And so this is basically how we're doing those filterings. We're listening to context and then we're applying that context. So as long as the context is sending a field that also exists in Birst that is related to the data that you're trying to use, then you would be able to set these up in your own system. So I'll just show this example. And this is definitely something that a power user or admin may want to be setting up. And so if you look here, this is the actual query. I'm looking at everything in my query. But then if I look at this scenario, when I actually have it on the workspace itself or on this widget panel, it's only filtering for that one specific product. And so that is just something to kind of showcase, hey, it really is listening to the context here, because when I look at the full query, I'm seeing everything. But again, as I'm selecting the different items, it's then showing this specifically. We also just released the outgoing, so you can even send context if you want to. And then here is the receiving. Let me open this and we'll kind of end on this piece here. So when you're looking at context in the actual application, it's a little bit of a complicated syntax here, but essentially you just fill this out to say, what are you listening for? So in this scenario, I'm listening to the entity type of Infor item master, and ID1 is what I'm looking for. And ID1 is mapped to product.product in Birst. So again, this is a little bit more of a high level admin power user capability. We do have this documented so that you can review that. But always our partners are very familiar with this as well. So if you need some assistance, we can definitely provide that. But why is this important? A lot of times, again, we have a lot of users who don't necessarily want to have to navigate. If I wanted to get the same information, I've got to go to a Birst dashboard. I got to find the dashboard. Then I got to add the filters, when I can simply really look at this really closely and potentially see any anomalies that might be happening for this particular product, right? And you can do this at any level. So again, as long as that context is sending, and as long as you have that data in Birst, you can now start to really see, how things are going from that trending perspective. So that's all I have to show today. I hope this has been super helpful and high level. Again, we'll be doing a huge deep dive on this hands-on in the October TechX event. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and pass over to Yvonne and have her showcase the EPM stuff.
Yes, thank you, Tiffany, and hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Yvonne Henscheid, and I'm located near Darmstadt in Germany. And I'm in the EPM team already for over 20 years, where I'm currently working as an architect, connecting functional requirements with the technical components and connecting teams together to work together. And this new widget is an example of where the Birst and EPM team work together. And thanks a lot for that, Tiffany. Worked great. So the EPM team is currently working on two initiatives that are very related to the new widget. On one thing we are working on is the Gen AI for EPM, where we currently work on ad hoc creation through chat. And this kind of usability we of course also want to integrate in future in the new widget, but this is on the roadmap still. The other thing that Tiffany already mentioned is the role-based homepages. So EPM is working on the C-suites, on C-level reporting, workspaces, and dashboards. And we are currently working on the CFO role, which is going to be released in April 26. And once the new widget is mature enough, then of course we want to adopt it for all the workspaces, because then we will have the same consistent and beautiful user experience and look for all the workspaces. So that's something that hopefully will be available very soon. So now, before I go into the demo, I want to acknowledge that the EPM part of the widget integration is not yet fully functional. So there's some functionality you'd expect that is not there yet. And you might even run into some things that are not working, but that's intentional. We want to go out there and we want to open up the communication with you so that you can give us your feedback. You can give us your feature wishes and so on, so that we can build and focus on the stuff that really everybody needs. So we are interested in hearing from you. Now, so then I will step into the demo. So I will work on a workspace that I prepared for today. And this is using a DPM sample database. Everybody probably knows the samples, the best practices samples. And I already created a few widgets just to show that, look, now finally you can have a tree map on EPM data. And this is a tree map that I created on the analysis cube, where you can see the actual revenue of the different tire types, color-coded by the variants. So the actual budget comparison color codes this tree map for you. This is a chart that you cannot build in Application Studio at all. And this new feature really enriches the dashboards, the workspaces heavily. So to now get started, let's create a new widget. I will add here the Visual Analytics widget. There it is. And so I'll build a trend. I'll make it a bit bigger. And here we go. So it starts where Tiffany showed us already how we can pick between Birst and EPM. So as an EPM user, I'll go here. And now I will see a list of applications where I have access and which have OLAP data. So the EPM OLAP data are the base for the Visual Analytics widget. And I'll stick to the good old best practices. And here in that query builder, I see now all data connections that are in the EPM best practices. I'll just pick really the sample database. And then being a good cook, I prepared myself some MDX queries. If you are somewhat experienced with Application Studio, you might have run into some MDX building already, because you can plug in snippets of MDX into EPM. The MDX functionality is all documented in the EPM online help, and it follows the typical standard that you know from Microsoft Analysis Services. It's select, put something on rows, on columns, from which cube, and what filters to apply. And here we go. So I'm gonna create, let's stick to revenue. Then I need to validate the query. If it's not valid, I cannot continue. Here we go. And then I go next. And now we are in the beautiful chart configuration widget. As it is an actual budget chart, I think I would like to make it a combo chart. And I draw the budget as a line and the actual as normal columns, just to highlight the different nature of the two measures. But they still shall share the same axis. So I'm going to merge the two axes into one and created my widget here. So this is, as you see, rather natural. I get the same look and feel as with Birst data. So we finally get a joint user experience across different data from different applications. So that's really just something that I totally enjoyed. So once you get to play with this widget, you can see how many cool visualizations you can play with. That's really, really rich and powerful. Another widget that Tiffany showed was the KPI widget. And I want to briefly show how to build those for EPM, because I had a hard time figuring it out. And I think I want to share my knowledge here with you all. So Tiffany showed already how you have to create, how you have to tell how many KPIs you want to show, and then you write queries for each KPI, so for the big number and for the trend. And for me, it never worked. I couldn't figure out why does it not allow me to create or to choose the KPI type in the charts library. And the secret knowledge you have to have is you need to write a query that only uses the columns axis of a result set, of a table. Normal queries, you always write something on the columns and on the rows. But today, when you want to build a KPI, you go only for columns. And there you can then, query your KPI that you want to have. You choose whether you want to go actual, budget, or variance. You can create calculations. So here for this little indicator, I created a session calculated member using standard MDX functionality and created here my little trend icon for EPM. So again, we can use the same beautiful visualizations that the Birst widget, the shared widget provides now for everybody. And this is all that I wanted to demo. So we open it up for questions. If you have some more questions, oops. Oh, look, I found something new.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yvonne. No, I'm going back,
We do have some questions, and because I was going through them, I apologize if you already answered this, but is there a specific EPM capability that is required to be able to use this?
You need to have access to EPM applications, of course, with OLAP data inside. So as you are already in the portal, you are single signed on to EPM. So all your OLAP permissions will take effect. And additionally, there's a setting on data connection which says is available in ad hoc. And we basically deduced that if you can do ad hoc report building in EPM, then you can also do MDX ad hoc widget building using the Visual Insights widget.
Okay, all right. So there is a specific capabilities or specific capabilities that you need to be able to use that. That's good, and we'll put them in the Q&A document so that everybody can find that. I think that's pretty much the only like EPM specific question, but we do have a lot of questions in here. So I think we should bring back Tiffany also for this one in case. All right. So Tiffany, we have a lot. So couple of easy ones here. First of all, this is only for the cloud, right?
Correct. This is only for multi-tenant cloud. So if you have the portal experience, essentially. So if you have portal, then you should be able to have access to this. It is not available in GovCloud yet, but we are in the process of going through the auditing to get that as part of the GovCloud. So more to come on the GovCloud side of it. As you may know, the GovCloud process has a lot of auditing and things that we have to go through with third parties. And so that's typically why it's a little bit more behind on the schedule for commercial cloud, but it will be available in GovCloud in the future.
Okay. Then there is about drilling down. So are these widgets interactive?
Yeah, so I'm glad somebody asked that because I completely missed some of that. So we don't have the capability yet to say, you know, in Birst, you could have, let's say, the category, and then you could go into the products, right? We don't have that yet. We are looking at how to bring in that functionality, but we do have some things that you can still do. So we still have our visual lasso where you can actually kind of, you know, go into a more confined area, if you will. So we did bring that capability in. So you can then refresh this so that it takes you back to the original view. We also have some functionality here with the zoom. So you can zoom in if you want it to just appear a little bit bigger on the axis side. Then you can refresh that. And then we also have some capabilities as well on the that come into the table. So you can still do certain things here, so you can still see sub summaries and things. So I don't have a good example here of like the break by, but you can still do break by. So you still have a lot of that same functionality, but no drilling yet. But we do hope to bring that in the future so that you have some more richness in here as well. We also plan to have things that you can actually pass the variables. So whatever filters you've applied here, when you navigate to that, let's say you wanted to navigate to a workspace so that it's automatically applying those filters over. So that's another piece that we're also working on.
Okay, so we do have now a couple of questions for EPM. So the first one is, for EPM, can we query the relational/staging database, or is it only for OLAP?
It's only for OLAP. That's why the list of applications really only shows you OLAP data connections.
Okay. There's another one. To create queries, you mentioned only putting the columns in the select. You had difficulties creating your KPI. What can
Yes.
we put in the select part of the queries again? Thank you.
So let me show it. So in a normal query, let's go for this one here. You always write like a two-dimensional query where you describe what shall go on rows of your output and what shall go on columns. That's the normal MDX structure. You always say select what on rows, on columns, and then from which cube and what slice of data you want to apply. And only in that KPI widget, you kind of drop the rows piece. You just ignore rows. You only fill the column axis of your query. And then this one will be your KPI.
And I think it's similar to Birst, right? So a KPI is a single measure. It's not a measure divided by a bunch of attributes. That's when a chart comes into play. And so when you're building that KPI, that's exactly the same in Birst. You want it to just be a single measure. You don't want to add in attributes, because when you add in attributes, you're now dividing it. So in this scenario, I'm looking at attributes right through time. So you don't want to see a breakdown with that KPI. You want to see a summation of that single measure. So that gives hopefully a little more context of why you need to do that.
Okay, great. I'm trying to pick up some good questions. There are some basically for Birst functionality. I'm trying to answer those myself. There was a question about when customers are creating custom charts, they seem to be eliminated after each new rollout. Is this something you're aware of? Is there a fix planned?
Yeah, let's get more information on that. So if I'm understanding, when choosing custom charts, it then goes away after a release?
That's what I'm getting here. I don't have more details, but that's what I'm understanding here. So when
maybe it could be that you're talking about the actual content in Birst itself. So if you're utilizing content that's delivered by an application team in Birst dashboards, and you're making changes to that, depending on the application that you use, you might need to take certain steps to that customization so that when a new update or a new upgrade comes through with new content, it's not getting overridden. I have a feeling that's probably what you're referring to there. There's not a general answer of how every application does it a little bit differently on how you want to save that. But in general, and I'll just show this because this is probably something that happens to a lot of different people. But in general, you want to make sure that any new change that you make, you're not changing that in the same file folder for that report. You don't want it to hit that Infor report folder. You want to save it in a custom one, because what'll happen is when a new update comes in, they're basically replacing that entire file. And so you want to make sure that any chart that you've made changes to, that you've customized, is then saved somewhere differently. Otherwise, it will get overridden. So that's likely what's happening there. And the same applies at the dashboard level. So if you're making changes to a dashboard that's delivered, then you may want to create a copy of the dashboard that you prefer to use, so that it does not get overridden during that time frame. I have a feeling that's what it is. If it's not, if that doesn't relate to your actual question, then we can follow up on that after the fact.
Okay, there was a couple of, we're almost at the top of the hour, so let's try and do a couple more. Sorry. Okay, so what about the coloring? Is there a way to set a standard color palette for the widget so that it would be up to the company standards, for example?
So the color palette widgets are all based off of the Infor OS color palettes. So they are the same color palettes that you already have access to in the workspaces. So it's not going to be quite as you're not going to have it quite as much free range as you do at the dashboard level, right? At the dashboard, you can change your themes and do all kinds of things. But these are going to be the standard color palette. So right now, everything is the blue and the purple. So if that is a request, I would suggest putting that use case in the enhancement request portal, so that we can take a look at how we would solve that. That would be solved more at the Infor OS level, and not necessarily at the individual widget level. So we're inheriting all of the same themes that the design team has put together, basically.
Okay. One for Yvonne. Do the EPM widgets have context filtering?
Not yet. We have a plan for supporting context parameters as elements. That's our first functional scope. Then when you create a mapping, and Tiffany showed how you kind of tell, okay, I'm listening to this business context message, then you can tell, okay, I want to use this field of the context message as a slice element. And slice element means it would automatically go to the where part of the filter, and you wouldn't have to type it at all. So here, this piece here would automatically be extended then with whatever the current value is in that parameter. And it would also automatically add the comma if needed. So that's the slice element. And the other type is saying it's any one or several elements, and then you can incorporate them somewhere in the list that go to rows and columns into whatever filters or custom calculations you want to create. But this is not yet out there.
Okay. So maybe second to last question at this point, how the widget data gets refreshed? Is it manually or by schedule? And how do we share the workspace report to users? So this is a little bit broader question, I guess.
So the data is refreshed based off of the refreshed data in EPM or in Birst. So there's no special refresh with the widget itself. It's looking directly at all of your analytical data. So if you're refreshing your data in Birst daily, then that's how often your widget would technically be refreshed. If you're refreshing your data hourly, then you would be getting an hourly refresh. And if you'll notice, every time I jump into a new workspace, it's automatically resending that query and generating here. So if you are changing your data, and as we bring in more capabilities with like real-time analytics and things, you'll be able to refresh those. And then you also have this refresh button here that will allow you to automatically resend that query. So it's really more based off of how often you're refreshing the data at the Birst or EPM system, not so much on the widget level. And then what was the second piece of the question? How do you share them?
Yeah, with users.
Yeah, so when you go in and you actually publish the widget, then if you remember when I was demoing here, and I'll just add a new widget. So once you have published it, then that user can then come in and add any of your published widgets. So here I have the aging report. And so now I have this and they can add it manually. So that's one option. The other option would be publishing an actual workspace. So if I want to take this workspace and I actually want to publish it so that anybody can then add this workspace, I can actually come into this publishing and you can determine who has access to this. So you can do it based off of role or based off of user. So if you're an admin person who's creating workspaces for your users, you can do that here. So this is more at the workspace level, or you can do it at the individual widget level, and then they can add it manually to the workspaces that they use. So there's kind of two different options there.
Great. And we have 3 minutes, so I guess it's time for the summary. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I think we we're able to see a lot of information today. I don't think an hour is really enough to cover probably all of your questions and all of the cool capabilities that you have. But I hope that this was super helpful. Again, we'll have some more documentation available. We're going to be doing more demos. And then I will go ahead and pass it to Rena to close us out. Thanks, Rena.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Yvonne. Very interesting and looks so much easier to use than the previous one. And I know everybody is excited about the possibility of using more than one space within a workspace. This session is recorded. It will be available through the registration link, and we will be posting this also to YouTube in a week or so, is my guess here. The Q&A, there's a lot of questions in there still. So we're going to take all of your questions, we're going to answer them, and we'll be posting them on the communities for EPM and Birst in the developer portal. I just posted a link into the chat like a minute ago. So if you haven't been to the developer portal, haven't been to the communities, get there now so that you can get these answers. I'm going to say Monday, Tuesday, probably next week when we get them posted. But with that, I want to thank everybody for joining the session. Thank you again to Tiffany and Yvonne for the very interesting information. And I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.